Good day, Bob from BBD. This is Geopolitics Roundup of the week. This is a very interesting way to round up an article by M.K. Bhadrakumar, The Foreign Policy Reset. All signs point toward a recalibration of India's diplomatic compass since the tumultuous events in Kabul 2 months ago. He says, there is something odd about the revelation regarding an international conference on Afghanistan in the second week of November that India plans to host. That brings us to the big question, is the Indian ship changing course? The answer is yes and no. All signs point towards a major calibration of the foreign policy compass in recent weeks, since the tumultuous events in Kabul 2 months ago culminated in the formation of an interim government by the Taliban. To connect the incipient signs, so far as regards the way forward in Afghanistan, India has opted to align with Anglo-American camp in the international lineup arrayed against the Eurasian axis of Russia, China and Iran. Makes sense. Thus, Delhi has moved up to the center stage of the Quad. In turn, Washington accepts that the Quad ought to be inclusive. Global Britain is knocking on the door. On its part, Delhi has displayed its comfort level in no unmistaken terms with the AUKUS. Broadly, the historical Western experience of the EU and NATO moving in tandem, each with an independent identity notionally, but with a shared purpose geopolitical objective to weaken a common enemy, is being replicated with Asian characteristics. A dual containment strategy is unfolding against China and Russia. All this entails India shedding its Chanakyan ambivalence. Thus, it is short-lived. Dalliance with Iran is losing its gravitas, and India has swung to the other extreme to identify with a new quadrilateral platform in West Asia with Israel, UAE, and the US. This is the way he puts it. The astonishing zigzagging in India's regional policy takes the breath away. It certainly does, right? Enter Pakistan. Suffice to say, Pakistan's National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf faces a Hobson's choice. He's damned if he accepts Ajit Doval's invite and goes to India at a time when Kashmiris reject the abrogation of J&K's special status, and when Delhi has not even cared to hide its toxic hostility towards Pakistan. And equally, Yusuf's damned if he turns down what the international community would only perceive as an Indian overture to turn a new leaf with its difficult neighbor. It makes eminent sense that Doval will be chairing the conference. For Doval, the stunning setback in Afghanistan ought to be temporary. What else? Iran, and basically taking off on that, Iran's been sidelined. Iran slams Adani ports, bans us unprofessional. Going forward, world congratulates India on billion dose milestone. So we are rocking in the world that far as concerned. This is the other important one. In push to Buddhist tourism, Modi inaugurates Kushinagar International Airport. And in this sense, Goyal, two more nations, one bloc, keen to start FTA talks. Forget keenness, let's just wrap it up. India offers spectrum of opportunities FM in the US. India startups raised record 11 billion in 3 months, and this all more or less from the United States. Foxconn, Nokia 29, others get DOT not for telecom PLI. Foxconn mulls making EVs in Europe, India and Latin America. India among Foxconn options to make EVs. They should be invited right in. And what else is happening in India? Apple may have shipped a record 2 million iPhones in Q3. So America is beginning to sing. And look at who's interested in IPL. Again, geopolitical in a sense, because cricket, that's what it is. Man U owners show interest in IPL franchise. Now, here's a big thing, right? New Quad takes shape with focus on tech, trade, big data. India, Israel, US and UAE sit for first meetings. In his remarks, Blinken described Israel, the UAE and India as three of our most strategic partners. I think that is what the gathering is about. Sitting here in Washington, I can say very simply that with Israel, the UAE and India, we have three of our most strategic partners, and given so many overlapping interests, energy, climate, trade, regional security, this seems like a really good idea to try and use this new format. Okay. Infra projects in transport, tech and focus at first meeting of new Quad. India and Israel agree on vaccination certificate recognition and talks. And this is a new Quad in West Asia, something written by C. Raja Mohan. He says, what is the kind of agenda that this group can develop? Like the Eastern Quad, it would make sense for the new Middle Eastern minilateral to focus on non-military issues like trade, energy, environment, and focus on promoting public goods. A ministerial meeting of the US, UAE and Israel in Washington last week to mark the first anniversary of the Abraham Accords set up 2 working groups to promote trilateral as well as broader regional cooperation. One working group is focused on strengthening religious tolerance and the other on water and energy issues. Important, folks. And what does Sanjay Barua have to write? He says geo-economic of two quads. He says India's civilizational and economic footprints across Asia have through history stretched from the Mediterranean to the Pacific, from the Indian Ocean littoral to Central Asia. This was destroyed by the Europeans coming in. The creation of an East Asian and a West Asian Quad with India partnering the United States, Japan, Australia in the East and US, Israel and United Arab Emirates in the West provides a framework for India's re-engagement with Asia that remains constrained towards the north by the China-Pakistan axis. It is relevant that all the 5 partners in the 2 quads are both economic and defense partners and all economic powers. If the immediate focus of the East Asian Quad was on COVID-19 pandemic, climate change and development of critical and emerging technologies, the West Asian Quad has prioritized trade, technology, big data, digital and physical infrastructure, transport and maritime security. That's the important part, folks. So there's this article which says South Asian nations back China's take on human rights in Xinjiang. Wake up call for India as Sri Lanka and Nepal join Pakistan and Myanmar. Well, are you surprised about Sri Lanka and Nepal? I'm not. Well, is there anything to worry about? I don't think so. What we got to worry, what we are glad is Bangladesh and Maldives stayed on our side, right? But this is what we got to do in Bangladesh, disturbed in Dhaka. He says, as far as India is concerned, New Delhi has done well to adopt a measured tone towards the incidents of violence in Bangladesh and put its faith in Hasina. She has proved to be India's closest ally and gone the extra mile in addressing our security concerns. Therefore, it would be prudent to support her wholeheartedly and eschew using the situation in Bangladesh for domestic political gains. I am beginning to hear that this might be used in Bengal and UP, and they should refrain. It is in India's interest that Hasina and her progressive vision for Bangladesh succeeds. Look at the liberals there, protesters, academics in Bangladesh demand law to protect minorities. Bangladesh ex-skipper slams heartbreaking violence. Okay. And this is the important part. India-UK exercise to focus on digital interoperability. And there you see F-35B jets on board the HMS Queen Elizabeth. India should become part of this F-35 chain, right? Mauritius exits FATF grey list. Thank you. A lot of push by India. Mauritius is really critical for funds that come into India. But here is the important part. Turkey joins Pakistan in FATF grey list. Pak needs to further demonstrate that investigations and prosecutions of proscribed terrorists and terror groups is being seriously pursued. Action against Turkey. Although Turkey understood the risk it faces for money laundering and terrorist financing, there were serious shortcomings, says FATF. So, nail in the coffin, another nail in the coffin of Pakistan, because Turkey is one of their biggest supporters. So China continues with its bad ways, right? On LAC, China's intent is clear. India must strengthen ties across Indo-Pacific to stand up to China's belligerent stand on LAC. And Uday Bhaskar calls it right. LAC and the India-China stalemate. LAC is fragile and India has to deal with a more complex geopolitical situation than in October 62. He says China's intimidation of Taiwan is illustrative of the inflexible resolve that Xi Jinping has brought to bear in pursuit of territoriality. The Galwan experience and the rhythms of October 1962 should serve as a wake-up call for PM Modi about the chicanery that he has to deal with along the LAC. India must be honest with itself. It's really, really critical. We can't be delusional, and especially our Ministry of Foreign Affairs who keep getting led up a garden path by Russia, none other than Russia. New weapons deployed in East to counter China. This is to replace the Bofens gun. This is the 150 mm 39 caliber M77 howitzer have a range of up to 30 kilometers and extremely mobile. India rejects, the vice president was going to Arunachal. Guess who's going to shout and scream? China. India rejects China's stand on VP's Arunachal tour. Army well poised to hold the line against China in Arunachal. New artillery, guns, rifles, chopper-borne troops add to army firepower at Tawang. China an aggressor against India and others. US's Beijing envoy nominee. And same time, EU MPs push for closer ties with Taiwan. So should India after what China did with Bhutan. Nicholas Burns acknowledges China's strength but says US and allies can manage its rights, and that's the important statement. and Nicholas Burns was critical for our nuclear deal. So important. India diplomat speech hit by glitch during BRI criticism at the UN. Trust China's hand. India, China lash out at each other as talks reach bitter deadlock. Complete pullback India to China at talks. China ramps up military drills in Arunachal sector. So they are going to keep playing this game, right? India, China deadlocked on hot springs. Chill deepens after round 13. Border point has a pass. Pullback here is key to de-escalation in region. IAF chief visits Ladakh amid LAC standoffs. So things are heating up, right? There is enough information to suggest that we're going to have a problem, right? China come March. China building dual-use villages along LAC's Lieutenant General. China hasn't pulled back forces it mobilized across India's eastern borders. Increase in troops, infra on Chinese side of LAC. So India is now making sure, and this was the other one. After Ladakh, India, China, war of words on Naidu's Arunachal trip. China objects, India says state is integral part, which it is. And India must push this. India backs fresh WHO probe into COVID origin and nail China for this. And here we have need more info, can't cut corners on Covaxin, says WHO. But I got to ask WHO, what kind of corners and what kind of payoffs did it get for the Chinese vaccine? Folks, there it is. So, tensions flare over missile test Navy drills near Japan, including Navy drills of China and Russia through the seas between Japan and the test by North Korea. India building hypersonic missiles, says US report, and this has got to do with our BrahMos. And we are up there. I guess that's why India really didn't go crazy about the hypersonic missile that was tested by China, because India was ahead of that game, right? But this is what's impressive. Conflict escalating, Taiwan won't bow to China. That's reality. He says Biden says US would defend Taiwan and Beijing went ballistic. China slams US and Canada for sending warships to Taiwan Strait. Taiwan Strait is getting crazy, man, all right? China carries out beach landing drills near Taiwan, so they are getting equally threatening. Biden says US will defend Taiwan. China says no room for compromise, and this is why what is behind China's recent escalation of tensions vis-a-vis Taiwan's right, Sani Hashmi. He says Sana Hashmi, cross-strait tensions have escalated again, leading to extensive debate about the potential invasion of Taiwan by China. Between October 1 and 5, China sent as many as 150 warplanes into Taiwan's ADIZ. On October 4, 56 PLA aircraft were sent, setting a record of the highest number of warplanes in a single day. But the number of incidents is also a telltale sign of Beijing's desperation to intimidate Taipei and push back the United States and other countries from making any further commitments in supporting and securing Taiwan's position vis-a-vis China. Right? However, in 2020-21, Taiwan has not only stood up firmly to China's challenge, but has also gained accolades for its efficient handling of COVID-19. Then, Tsai was mentioned in Times 2020 list of the world's most influential people. This has only exacerbated the insecurity of the Chinese leadership. This year has brought about a greater realization on the part of major stakeholders in the Indo-Pacific that Taiwan's security is at peril and it must be included in the Indo-Pacific architecture. A repeated mention of Taiwan in the Japanese white paper and in statements by prominent Japanese leaders such as Taro Aso indicate that Indo-Pacific powers are actively involved in working with Taiwan. Taiwan has secured the strong support of the Joe Biden administration. Now countries such as Australia, Japan, and even smaller European countries such as Slovakia and Lithuania are supporting Taiwan. For China, the issue is linked to both domestic and foreign relations. Greater international support and appreciation of Taiwan has made the Chinese leadership insecure. Xi Jinping seems to be under pressure at home to portray that the geopolitical situation is tilted in China's favor. Similar moves by China along India-China border in Arunachal Pradesh confirm this future, and this is why the reality is China will not go in for a full-blown war unless it is confident of an outcome in its favor. For now, other than National Day optics and placating the domestic audience, China's major objective seems to be testing Taiwan's resolve and preparedness while also calculating how far it can go without escalating the situation. Such moves by China are dangerous not only for Taiwan but also for the stability of the Indo-Pacific. Like-minded countries should send out a clear signal that it is in China's best interest to stop military coercing Taiwan and respect the status quo. And that is exactly what India should be on the side of too. Folks, Jai Hind.